"There's a microphone in your digital frame," the 9-year-old black girl whispered to the billionaire CEO, "but it's not yours." Marcus Reed's hand froze over his keyboard, and what happened next would expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of Silicon Valley. Kaya hadn't expected anyone to believe her when she walked into the glass-walled office of CyberShield Technologies, still carrying her mother's cleaning supplies and wearing sneakers that squeaked against the polished marble floor. The afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor, casting geometric shadows across Marcus's mahogany desk. The scent of leather and expensive cologne hung in the air, mixed with the faint chemical smell of cleaning products that clung to Kaya's small frame. She stood there, barely tall enough to see over the desk's edge, her dark eyes fixed on the sleek digital frame that Sarah, Marcus's fiancée, had installed just last week. Marcus Reed, at 38, had built CyberShield from a college dorm room into a multi-billion-dollar quantum encryption empire. His office reflected that success. Original Picasso sketches, a vintage guitar signed by Hendrix, and technology so advanced it looked like art. But none of that mattered now, not after what Kaya had whispered. "What did you say?" Marcus asked, his voice careful, controlled. The kind of voice that had closed deals worth hundreds of millions, but now carried an edge of something else. Fear. Kaya stepped closer, her mother's yellow cleaning gloves still on her small hands. "The digital frame Miss Sarah brought," she said, pointing to the elegant black rectangle displaying rotating images of San Francisco's skyline. "It's transmitting data that doesn't belong to your network." 6 months ago, when Kaya's father died in a construction accident, Marcus had done more than offer condolences. He'd given Kaya's mother, Diane, a job cleaning the executive floors of CyberShield. More than that, he'd given 9-year-old Kaya something most kids her age never got: access to technology that could change the world. While her mother cleaned offices after hours, Kaya would sit in the break room with her hand-me-down tablet, a device Marcus had upgraded with experimental software. She'd taught herself to code by reverse engineering the programs she found. She could scan networks, trace signals, identify anomalies that even CyberShield's security team might miss. "Show me," Marcus said, pushing back from his desk. Kaya pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the cracked screen. Within seconds, a network map appeared, every device in the building represented by a small icon. Most glowed blue, indicating they belonged to CyberShield's encrypted network, but one pulsed red. "There," she said, pointing to the digital frame. "It's not just displaying pictures. It's recording audio and transmitting it to an external server every night at 3 a.m. Marcus stared at the screen, his mind racing. The frame had been Sarah's idea, a housewarming gift for his office. She'd said it would add warmth to the sterile corporate environment. He'd thought it was sweet, thoughtful. Now he understood it was strategic. "How long have you known?" he asked. 3 days, Kaya replied, her voice small but steady. "But I wanted to be sure before I told you. I ran the trace 5 times. Same result every time." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah wasn't just his fiancée. She had access to his home, his schedule, his most private conversations. If she was behind this, then everything, their relationship, their engagement, their planned future, was a lie. Kaya watched his face carefully. She'd seen that expression before, when her father's supervisor had explained that the safety equipment failure wasn't an accident. It was the look of someone realizing they'd been betrayed by people they trusted. "Mr. Reed," she said softly, "are you okay?" Marcus looked down at her. This brilliant little girl who'd just shattered his world with a whisper and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Kaya," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind, "I need your help." Kaya Williams had always been different. At 9 years old, while other kids played video games, she wrote code. While they watched cartoons, she studied network protocols. While they complained about homework, she hacked into her school's grading system, not to change anything, just to see if she could. Her mother, Diane, worked 3 jobs before landing the night cleaning position at CyberShield. Single mother, high school education, determined to give her daughter something better. She'd seen Kaya's potential early. The way she could fix any electronic device, how she absorbed technical manuals like bedtime stories, how she asked questions that made MIT graduates pause. The CyberShield job was a blessing in disguise. While Diane cleaned offices from 6 p.m. to midnight, Kaya had access to technology that most universities couldn't afford. Marcus had noticed her immediately. A small black girl sitting in the break room, completely absorbed in coding tutorials on a tablet held together with electrical tape. "What are you working on?" he'd asked one evening, finding her still there at 10 p.m. "Trying to understand why the building's Wi-Fi keeps dropping packets in the northwest corner," she'd replied without looking up. "I think there's interference from the cell tower across the street, but the frequency analysis doesn't match standard patterns." Marcus had blinked. He'd paid consultants thousands of dollars to identify that exact problem. That night, he'd given her a new tablet. A week later, he'd installed advanced security software. Within a month, Kaya was informally helping troubleshoot network issues that stumped his IT department. But Kaya's brilliance came with isolation. At school, kids called her weird. Teachers didn't know what to do with a third grader who corrected their computer science lessons. She ate lunch alone, spent recess in the library, went home to an empty apartment while her mother worked. CyberShield became her sanctuary. In Marcus's office, surrounded by cutting-edge technology and treated like her ideas mattered, she felt normal. He never talked down to her, never dismissed her observations, never made her feel like her age or background disqualified her thoughts. The death of her father had been devastating, but in some ways it had also been the catalyst that brought her to CyberShield. Jerome Williams had been a construction worker, proud of his daughter's mind even if he didn't understand it. "Baby girl's got a gift," he'd tell anyone who'd listen. "She's gonna change the world someday." Marcus had attended the funeral, not because he had to, but because he genuinely cared about the family his company had inadvertently created. When he'd offered Diane the cleaning job, it wasn't charity. It was recognition that Kaya needed to be around technology, around people who could nurture her potential. Now, standing in his office with evidence of betrayal displayed on her tablet screen, Kaya felt the weight of responsibility. She'd discovered something that could destroy the man who'd been kinder to her than almost anyone except her parents. But she'd also discovered something that could protect him. "My mum doesn't know I can do this," she said quietly, gesturing to the network analysis. "She thinks I just play games on the tablet." Marcus understood. Diane worked hard to provide stability, normalcy. The idea that her 9-year-old daughter was capable of corporate-level cybersecurity would terrify her. "This stays between us," Marcus promised. "But Kaya, what you found, it's bigger than just a hidden microphone. If Sarah is working for someone else, if she's been gathering intelligence—" "She is," Kaya interrupted. "I traced the signal path. The data doesn't just go to one server. It routes through 3 different countries before reaching its final destination. That's spy-level operational security." Marcus felt a chill. "How do you know about spy-level anything?" Kaya shrugged. "I read a lot. And I watch the patterns. People think kids don't notice things, but we see everything. We just don't always understand what it means." Looking at her now, this brilliant, observant child who'd just exposed a conspiracy, Marcus realized she understood more than most adults ever would. "What do we do now?" he asked. For the first time since entering his office, Kaya smiled. "Now we find out how deep this goes." The executive elevator hummed softly as it descended toward the parking garage. Marcus rode in silence, his mind reeling from Kaya's revelation. Beside him, Sarah Chen adjusted her designer purse, her movements precise and elegant as always. 6 months of engagement, 2 years of dating, and he was only now seeing the calculation behind every gesture. "Long day?" she asked, her voice carrying that familiar note of concern that had once made him feel cherished. Now it sounded rehearsed. "Just some network issues," Marcus replied, watching her reaction carefully. "Nothing major." Sarah's pause lasted exactly 2 seconds, long enough to be noticeable, brief enough to seem natural. "Oh? What kind of issues?" Kaya noticed some unusual signal patterns, probably just interference from the new cell tower installation. Marcus kept his voice casual, but his eyes never left Sarah's face. "Kaya?" Sarah's laugh was light, dismissive. "Isn't she a bit young to be diagnosing network problems?" There it was, the subtle condescension that Marcus had previously attributed to Sarah's privileged background. Now he heard it differently, the practiced deflection of someone trained to minimize threats. They reached the parking garage, and Sarah's Tesla Model S waited in its reserved spot. As she unlocked the car, Marcus made his decision. "I'm staying late tonight," he said. "Need to run some diagnostics. Want me to wait? The offer sounded genuine, but Marcus caught the tension around her eyes. No need. This could take hours. Sarah kissed his cheek, another gesture that now felt like performance. Don't work too late. You know how you get when you're obsessing over technical problems. Marcus watched her drive away, noting how she checked her phone immediately upon leaving the garage. He counted to 60, then returned to the elevator. Back in his office, Kaya sat exactly where he'd left her, tablet in her lap, fingers dancing across code that looked like digital poetry. She'd changed into her mother's spare uniform shirt, too big for her small frame but somehow making her look more serious, more professional. She's reporting, Kaya said, without looking up. Signal burst transmitted 30 seconds after you reached the garage. Short message, probably coded. Marcus felt his stomach drop. You've been monitoring her phone? Not directly. But when someone's device suddenly starts transmitting encrypted data through 7 proxy servers, it shows up on network analysis. Kaya finally looked up, her dark eyes holding a gravity that belonged on someone much older. Mr. Reed, she's not just recording you. She's been copying files. The screen showed a data transfer log that made Marcus's blood run cold. Over the past 3 months, someone with administrative access had copied terabytes of data from CyberShield's most secure servers. Project Quantum, their revolutionary encryption algorithm worth billions in military contracts, had been accessed repeatedly. How is this possible? Marcus asked. Sarah doesn't have administrative access. No, Kaya agreed, but David Chen does. David Chen, Marcus's best friend since MIT, his business partner, his CFO. Sarah's older brother, though she rarely mentioned the connection. Marcus had introduced them at last year's company Christmas party, proud to show his fiancée where he worked, eager for the 2 most important people in his life to meet his extended business family. You think David is involved? Kaya pulled up another screen, security footage from the executive floor. He's been here after hours 6 times in the past month, always on nights when your regular security guard was off duty, always using his administrative access to enter restricted areas. The footage showed David moving through darkened hallways with purpose, entering the server room, connecting external devices to secure terminals. Each visit lasted exactly 47 minutes, long enough to copy massive files, short enough to avoid triggering automated security alerts. They're working together, Marcus whispered. More than that, Kaya said softly. I think they're working for someone else. The signal analysis shows coordination with external parties. This isn't just corporate espionage, it's state-sponsored. The weight of betrayal crashed over Marcus like a wave. Sarah wasn't just stealing from his company, she was stealing national security assets. David wasn't just betraying their friendship, he was committing treason. What do we do? Marcus asked. Kaya saved her work and closed the tablet. We be very, very careful, because if they suspect we know, they'll accelerate their timeline. Timeline for what? Complete extraction, Kaya replied. They're not just copying your data anymore. They're preparing to destroy CyberShield from the inside. Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, staring out at the San Francisco skyline as the city lights began to twinkle in the growing dusk. Behind him, Kaya sat cross-legged on the leather couch, surrounded by tablets, laptops, and cables that transformed his executive suite into a makeshift command center. Show me everything, he'd said an hour ago. Now he wished he hadn't asked. The evidence spread across multiple screens told a story of infiltration so sophisticated it made his stomach turn. Sarah hadn't just been recording his conversations, she'd been mapping his entire digital life. Every password he'd typed near the digital frame, every confidential call, every casual mention of security protocols had been captured and transmitted. The really scary part, Kaya said, adjusting her glasses as she pulled up another analysis, is how they got David to help. Look at this. The screen showed financial records that Kaya had somehow accessed. Marcus decided not to ask how. David's personal accounts showed a pattern of deposits that corresponded exactly with each data breach. 50,000 here, 75,000 there. Over 6 months, nearly $500,000. David's in debt, Marcus realized. His divorce, his ex-wife's medical bills, his gambling problem he thought no one knew about. They knew, Kaya said quietly. Someone did their homework. They found his pressure points and squeezed. Marcus felt physically ill. David had been his roommate at MIT. his best man at his first wedding, the person he'd called when his father died. They'd built CyberShield together, weathered every storm, celebrated every victory. Now David was selling everything they'd created. "There's more," Kaya continued, her voice getting smaller. "I traced the ultimate destination of the data. It's not going to a competitor." The screen filled with a network diagram that looked like a spiderweb. Data flowed from CyberShield through multiple servers, bouncing across 3 continents before landing at its final destination, a server farm in Beijing, registered to a company that didn't officially exist. "Foreign intelligence," Marcus whispered. "Gets worse," Kaya said. "They're not just stealing Project Quantum. They're planning something called Operation Blackout. I found fragments of encrypted communications. It's scheduled for next week." Marcus turned from the window. "What's Operation Blackout?" "I can't decrypt it completely, but from context clues, I think they're planning to destroy your quantum encryption algorithm after they steal it. Make it look like CyberShield had a catastrophic security failure. Ruin your reputation, crash your stock price, maybe even trigger criminal investigations." The elegant cruelty of it took Marcus's breath away. Not content with theft, they wanted to destroy him completely, leave him financially ruined, professionally discredited, possibly facing prison time for security failures he hadn't caused. "Why?" he asked. Kaya looked up from her screen, her young face reflecting a wisdom that childhood shouldn't possess. "Because quantum encryption threatens someone's ability to spy on everyone else. If your algorithm succeeds, if every government and corporation starts using truly unbreakable encryption, a lot of very powerful people lose their ability to gather intelligence," Marcus finished. "So they eliminate the threat," Kaya nodded. "Steal the technology, destroy the creator, control the narrative." Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. The magnitude of what they were facing felt overwhelming. This wasn't corporate espionage. It was warfare conducted through manipulation and betrayal. "We have to stop them," he said. "We will," Kaya replied with a confidence that somehow steadied him. "But we need help, real help, professional help." Marcus knew exactly who she meant. Leon Barksdale, former NSA, now running private security consulting. They'd worked together years ago on a classified project. Leon had warned him then about the kinds of enemies that technological advancement could create. "I'll call Leon," Marcus decided. "But Kaya, if we do this, if we expose them, everything changes. Your life, your mother's life, mine. It all becomes dangerous." Kaya looked at him with eyes that had already seen too much loss. "Mr. Reed, they already made it dangerous. We're just choosing to fight back." She was right. The point of no return wasn't ahead of them. It was 6 months behind them. The moment Sarah had first smiled at him across a crowded restaurant, the moment David had first agreed to help with their financial problems. Now there was only one path forward, through the fire. Josephine Martinez had been cleaning executive offices for 23 years, and she'd developed an instinct for reading people that no management training could teach. As head of CyberShield's night custodial staff, she'd seen deals made and broken. Relationships formed and shattered, careers built and destroyed, all in the supposedly empty offices after business hours. She'd been watching Sarah Chen from the beginning. "Something's off about that woman," Josephine told Diane Williams as they organized cleaning supplies in the storage room. "Too polite, too interested in everything. Rich women don't usually ask the cleaning lady about her weekend plans." Diane paused in sorting the industrial-grade disinfectants. "Sarah's always been nice to me, even learned my name, which is more than most executives do." "That's exactly what I mean," Josephine insisted. "She remembers details. Asked about Kaya's school, about your late husband's work, about how long you've been cleaning offices. Rich people don't care about our lives unless they want something." The storage room fell quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Both women understood the unspoken rules of their invisible existence in the corporate world. Be helpful, be thorough, be forgettable. Sarah's attention violated those rules. "There's more," Josephine continued, lowering her voice. "I've seen her brother here after hours multiple times, always when Mr. Reed is gone, always when the regular security guard is off shift." Diane frowned. David Chen was supposed to be trustworthy, Marcus's oldest friend, the company's CFO. But Josephine had been watching corporate executives long enough to know that money and friendship didn't always align. What was he doing? Going places he shouldn't. Server room, file storage, even Mr. Reed's office when he thought no one would notice. Josephine leaned closer, and I caught him photographing documents with his phone. When he saw me, he acted like he was just checking messages, but I know what I saw. The implications hung heavy between them. Diane thought about her daughter, brilliant Kaya, who spent evenings in Marcus's office, learning things that most adults couldn't comprehend. If something corrupt was happening at CyberShield, Kaya was right in the middle of it. "We should tell someone," Diane whispered. "Tell who?" "Human Resources. David Chen signs their paychecks. Security? They're not here when this stuff happens. Mr. Reed?" Josephine shook her head. "He's engaged to the woman." "You think he's going to believe the night janitor over his fiancée?" But Diane was thinking about something else. Kaya's been acting strange lately. More focused, more secretive. She asks me technical questions I can't answer. Spends hours on that tablet Mr. Reed gave her. Smart kid like that, working with computers all the time. Maybe she's seen things too. As if summoned by their conversation, Kaya appeared in the doorway of the storage room. She looked small in the oversized hallway, but her expression carried an intensity that made both women pay attention. "Mom, Mrs. Martinez," she said quietly. "I need to tell you something, but you have to promise not to freak out." Diane's maternal instincts immediately activated. "Kaya, what's wrong?" "Sarah and David are stealing from Mr. Reed." I found proof. The storage room erupted in whispered exclamations and rapid-fire questions, but Kaya held up her hand for silence, a gesture surprisingly authoritative for a 9-year-old. "I can show you," she said, pulling out her tablet. "But first I need to know, Mrs. Martinez, when you saw David photographing documents, did you see which documents?" Josephine nodded slowly. "Contract proposals. The big military ones with all the classification stamps." Kaya's fingers flew across her tablet screen. "That matches the data theft timeline. Mom, remember when you said Sarah asked about Dad's construction accident? About the details, the timeline, whether there were any investigations?" Diane felt cold dread settling in her stomach. "I thought she was just being sympathetic." "She was profiling us," Kaya said matter-of-factly. "Learning our vulnerabilities, our financial situation, how desperate we might be for this job. Standard intelligence gathering technique." Josephine stared at the child who was casually discussing espionage tactics. "How do you know about intelligence gathering?" "I read a lot," Kaya replied, "and I've been watching them watch us." The three of them stood in the fluorescent-lit storage room, surrounded by mops and cleaning chemicals, contemplating the fact that they'd been unknowingly placed at the center of a conspiracy that reached far beyond anything they'd imagined. "What do we do now?" Diane asked. Kaya closed her tablet. "Now we help Mr. Reed save his company. If this discovery sent chills down your spine, you need to see what happens when they realize a 9-year-old has been watching them. Hit like and subscribe, because this is just the beginning." Leon Barksdale arrived at CyberShield at 11:47 p.m., entering through the parking garage in a black SUV with tinted windows and license plates that probably weren't registered to any civilian database. Marcus met him at the service elevator, noting how Leon's eyes automatically catalogued exits, sightlines, and potential threats even in the supposedly secure building. 23 years since MIT and you finally call," Leon said with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Must be serious." "It's worse than serious," Marcus replied as they rode to the executive floor. "It's existential." Leon Barksdale was 51, built like someone who'd spent decades staying ready for fights that might never come. His hair had gone gray at the temples, but his movement still carried the precise efficiency of his NSA days. After leaving government service, he'd built a private security consultancy that specialized in problems that required both technical expertise and absolute discretion. In Marcus's office, they found Kaya exactly where she'd been for the past 3 hours, surrounded by screens, following digital breadcrumbs through layers of encryption and misdirection that would challenge most graduate students in cybersecurity. "This is your secret weapon?" Leon asked, looking at the small black girl who was casually reverse engineering a foreign intelligence operation. "Kaya Williams," Marcus said. 9 years old, autodidact programmer, and apparently the only person in San Francisco who noticed I was being systematically robbed. Leon approached Kaya's workstation with the respect he'd show any professional analyst. "What have you found?" For the next 20 minutes, Kaya walked Leon through her discoveries with a clarity that impressed even someone who'd briefed NSA directors. She showed him the signal traces, the financial transfers, the coordination patterns, the ultimate destination of stolen data. Professional-grade tradecraft, Leon observed. Whoever recruited your fiancé knew what they were doing. Tell me about Sarah, Marcus said. What's her real story? Leon had spent the drive over running background checks through databases that theoretically didn't exist. What he'd found painted a picture that made Marcus's betrayal feel even more calculated. Sarah Chen, 28, born in Vancouver to Chinese immigrants. Legitimate tech industry career, but with gaps that don't quite make sense. MIT graduate, but no one from her supposed class remembers her. Worked for 3 different consulting firms, but when I called their HR departments, her employment records were mysteriously incomplete. Kaya looked up from her screen. Constructed identity? Deep cover, Leon confirmed. The kind of legend that takes years to build and serious resources to maintain. We're not dealing with corporate espionage. This is state-sponsored intelligence. Marcus felt the room spinning slightly. How long has she been targeting me? Based on the sophistication of her legend and the timeline of your company's military contracts, I'd guess they started planning this operation 3 years ago. Maybe longer. The implications were staggering. While Marcus thought he was living his life, making business decisions, falling in love, he'd actually been the subject of a multi-year intelligence operation. Every moment of intimacy, every shared confidence, every private vulnerability had been catalogued. Leon continued his briefing. David Chen's involvement makes more sense now. Recruiting Sarah's brother gave them an inside man with legitimate access and a personal connection to you. They probably targeted his financial vulnerabilities first, then introduced Sarah as the emotional component. They played us perfectly, Marcus said bitterly. Not perfectly, Kaya interjected. They didn't account for me. Leon smiled, the first genuine expression Marcus had seen from him. No, they didn't. Their operational planning assumed you lived and worked in isolation. They didn't anticipate a 9-year-old genius with unsupervised access to your network. Kaya blushed slightly at the compliment, but her focus remained professional. Mr. Barksdale, I found something else. The encrypted communications mention a final extraction scheduled for Friday night. That's tomorrow. Leon's expression hardened. They're accelerating because something spooked them. Maybe they detected your investigation. Maybe they have intelligence about an impending security audit. Either way, we're out of time. Marcus felt panic rising. What does final extraction mean? Best case scenario, they copy everything they need and disappear. Worst case, they destroy your company's digital infrastructure on the way out, making it look like you suffered a catastrophic security failure. Which scenario do you think we're looking at? Marcus asked. Leon and Kaya exchanged a look that contained more understanding than should have been possible between a former spy and a 9-year-old girl. Worst case, they said simultaneously. The next morning brought fog rolling in from San Francisco Bay, shrouding the CyberShield building in grey mist that seemed to match Marcus's mood. He'd managed perhaps 2 hours of sleep, his mind churning through scenarios and contingencies, each one worse than the last. Sarah was already awake when he returned to their shared penthouse apartment, sitting at the kitchen island with coffee and her laptop, looking perfectly composed despite the early hour. She wore a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her black hair falling in precise waves around her shoulders. "You're up early," she observed, not looking away from her screen. "Couldn't sleep," Marcus replied truthfully. "Network security keeps me up when there are problems." Sarah's fingers paused for exactly one keystroke before resuming their rhythm. "Still having issues?" "The anomalies are spreading," Marcus said, pouring himself coffee and settling across from her. "Leon Barksdale is coming in today to run a comprehensive security audit." This time, Sarah's pause lasted 3 full seconds. When she looked up, her smile was perfectly calibrated, concerned but not alarmed, supportive but not overly curious. "Leon Barksdale? I don't think you've mentioned him before." "Old friend from MIT. He runs cybersecurity consulting now, specializes in corporate espionage prevention." Marcus watched her face carefully. "Very thorough, very good at finding things that don't belong." "That sounds expensive," Sarah said lightly. "Worth every penny if it protects what we've built." Sarah closed her laptop with a soft click. I should probably stay out of the office today then. Don't want to interfere with the security review. Actually, Marcus said, Leon specifically requested that all key personnel remain available for interviews. He'll want to talk to you, David, the senior staff. Standard protocol for comprehensive audits. The mask slipped just for a microsecond. Marcus saw calculation behind Sarah's eyes, the quick mental assessment of options and risks that belonged to someone trained in operational planning. Of course, she said. Whatever helps. Marcus finished his coffee and headed for the shower, knowing that Sarah would use his absence to make urgent communications. As the water ran, he thought about Kaya's warning from the night before. They're going to know we know. When that happens, they'll have to choose between aborting the mission or eliminating the threats. What kind of threats? Marcus had asked. Us, Kaya had replied simply. Now standing under scalding water in his marble-walled shower, Marcus wondered if he'd made a mistake by returning to the apartment. If Sarah suspected that he knew about her real identity, this penthouse could become a trap. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Coffee shop on Montgomery. 1 hour. Come alone. Kaya was learning operational security from Leon, apparently. Marcus dressed quickly, kissed Sarah goodbye with the same casual affection he'd shown for months, and left the apartment. As the elevator descended, he wondered if it was the last time he'd ever see the place he'd called home. The coffee shop was crowded with morning commuters, which provided perfect cover for clandestine meetings. Marcus found Kaya at a corner table, wearing jeans and a Cyber Shield hoodie that made her look like any tech executive's kid brought to work for the day. They took the bait, she said without preamble. Sarah made 3 encrypted calls after you left for the shower. David's phone showed corresponding signal spikes. They're coordinating something. Leon's analysis? Final extraction is definitely tonight, but it's bigger than we thought. Kaya pulled out her tablet, showing a network diagram that looked like a digital war plan. They're not just targeting Cyber Shield. There are simultaneous operations planned against 4 other tech companies. This is coordinated economic warfare. Marcus stared at the screen, feeling the weight of responsibility. It's not just about stopping them anymore. No, Kaya agreed. It's about stopping them without letting them know we stopped them. If they realize their operation is blown, they'll warn the other teams. 4 other companies will get destroyed because we moved too fast. So what do we do? Kaya smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the brilliant child she was. We let them think they're winning. By afternoon, Cyber Shield's executive floor had transformed into something resembling a military command center. Leon's team had arrived in groups of 2 and 3, each member carrying equipment that looked sophisticated enough to monitor satellite communications. They wore business attire, but moved with the alertness of people accustomed to dangerous work. Marcus played his role perfectly, concerned CEO, worried about security breaches, grateful for professional help. He attended scheduled meetings, reviewed quarterly reports, maintained the facade of normalcy while his world quietly prepared for war. Sarah and David, meanwhile, had begun displaying subtle signs of stress that only trained observation could detect. David's usually immaculate appearance showed tiny flaws, a missed button, shoes that weren't quite polished to his usual standard. Sarah's smile never wavered, but her hands moved with slightly more precision, as if she was mentally rehearsing emergency procedures. They're preparing for acceleration, Leon observed during a brief hallway encounter. Classic behavior, when assets realize their operational window is closing. Kaya had spent the day embedded with Leon's technical team, ostensibly as a junior consultant, but actually serving as their guide through Cyber Shield's complex digital infrastructure. The sight of a 9-year-old explaining network architecture to former NSA analysts had initially raised eyebrows, but her competence quickly earned professional respect. I've isolated their communication channels, she reported during a late afternoon briefing in a secure conference room. They're using a mesh network topology that routes through compromised IoT devices throughout the city. Very sophisticated, but I found the pattern. Leon studied her analysis with the appreciation of someone who recognized exceptional work. This is graduate-level signals intelligence. Thank you, Kaya replied matter-of-factly. I also identified their extraction timeline. The final data transfer is scheduled for 11:47 p.m., just before the automated backup system cycle. They'll have a 17-minute window when large data transfers won't trigger security alerts. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. How much can they take in 17 minutes? Everything, Kaya said quietly. Every algorithm, every contract, every piece of intellectual property that makes CyberShield valuable. But that's not the worst part. She pulled up another screen, showing malware analysis that made Marcus's blood run cold. They're planning to inject a logic bomb that will activate 72 hours after extraction. It'll look like a delayed reaction to the data theft, but it'll actually be designed to destroy your backup systems and make recovery impossible. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just theft. It was corporate assassination designed to look like incompetence. Leon leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. They want to steal everything and then ensure you can't rebuild. Complete destruction disguised as security failure. Can we stop them? Marcus asked. Better than that, Leon replied. We can feed them exactly what we want them to take, while making them think they're getting away with everything. Kaya's eyes lit up with understanding. A honey trap. We give them fake data that looks real enough to satisfy their handlers, trace it back to the source, and expose the entire network, while simultaneously protecting the real intellectual property and gathering evidence of their crimes, Leon added. But the timing has to be perfect. One mistake, and they'll realize they've been burned. Marcus looked around the room at the collection of former intelligence professionals and one brilliant 9-year-old who'd somehow become the most important person in his life. 6 months ago, he'd thought his biggest challenges were quarterly earnings and competitive market pressures. Now he was planning a counter-espionage operation that would determine not just his company's survival, but possibly national security interests. What do you need from me? He asked. Kaya smiled, and for the first time all day she looked like the child she was. Just be yourself, Mr. Reed. Act natural, stay in your normal routine, and let us handle the rest. And if something goes wrong? Leon's expression was steel. Nothing will go wrong. We don't let things go wrong when children are involved. As the sun set over San Francisco, casting long shadows through the conference room windows, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Hope. Not just for survival, but for victory. At 9:15 p.m., Marcus Reed walked into his office carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the expression of a man who'd decided to work late on a Friday night. The building was nearly empty. Just security guards, cleaning crews, and the handful of executives who lived at the office. What Marcus actually carried, hidden beneath his jacket, was a secure communication device that connected him to Leon's mobile command center parked 3 blocks away. What he actually wore was the expression of a man preparing to spring the most sophisticated corporate counterintelligence trap in Silicon Valley history. Phase 1 is go, he said quietly, his words picked up by the nearly invisible microphone woven into his shirt collar. 3 floors below, Kaya sat in the back of Leon's surveillance van, surrounded by screens that would make NASA jealous. She wore oversized headphones and a concentration so intense it seemed to bend reality around her small frame. Signal confirmed, she replied through her own comm device. Sarah and David are both in the building. Sarah entered through the parking garage at 9:03. David through the executive entrance at 9:08. They're maintaining their normal Friday night routine, but their devices are transmitting preparation signals. The plan they'd spent all day crafting was elegant in its simplicity. Let the enemies believe they were succeeding, while feeding them exactly what Leon's team wanted them to take. Marcus opened his laptop and began typing, knowing that every keystroke was being monitored. He pulled up files labeled Project Quantum, Final Implementation, and Military Contract Database, Complete Archive. To anyone watching, it looked like a CEO doing sensitive work during quiet hours when he couldn't be interrupted. In reality, the files contained sophisticated fakes that Leon's team had spent hours creating. The quantum encryption algorithms were real enough to pass initial inspection, but contained subtle flaws that would render them useless. The military contracts were genuine documents that had already been declassified. The financial data was accurate but meaningless. Last quarter's numbers that were already public information. They're taking the bait, Kaya reported. Data transfer initiated from Sarah's location. She's in the conference room adjacent to your office, probably using the hidden microphone to confirm you're alone. Marcus continued typing, occasionally speaking aloud as if dictating notes to himself. Integration of quantum protocols with existing infrastructure, requires careful consideration of backward compatibility issues. The kind of technical monologue that would sound important to anyone listening, but actually contained no useful information. At 9:47 p.m., David Chen used his administrative access to enter the server room. Leon's cameras tracked his movement as he connected external storage devices to secure terminals and began copying the decoy files that Marcus had strategically accessed. Phase 2 is go, Leon's voice crackled through the comm system. Asset 1 is in the server room, Asset 2 maintaining overwatch. Kaya, initiate trace protocols. Kaya's fingers flew across her keyboard with the precision of a concert pianist. Trace active, I'm embedding tracking code in every file they copy. The moment they transmit to their handlers, we'll have complete network topology. The beauty of the operation was its invisibility. To Sarah and David, everything was proceeding exactly as planned. They were successfully extracting what appeared to be CyberShield's most valuable intellectual property, while Marcus worked obliviously in his office. The hidden microphones captured his technical dictation, confirming that he was engaged in legitimate work and posed no threat to their mission. What they didn't know was that every piece of data they copied contained hidden traces that would map their entire network when transmitted. The fake algorithms included logic that would identify any attempt at implementation, potentially revealing which foreign governments or corporations were behind the theft. Most importantly, the files contained delayed activation forensic markers that would prove theft had occurred, providing ironclad legal evidence for prosecution. How are we doing on timing? Marcus asked quietly. Perfect synchronization, Kaya replied. They're ahead of schedule, which means they feel confident. David's copying the financial databases now, Sarah's coordinating with external handlers. Estimated completion, 11:23 p.m., 24 minutes ahead of their original timeline. Leon's voice carried satisfaction. Overconfidence is the enemy of operational security. They're moving fast because they think they're safe. Marcus saved his work and leaned back in his chair, maintaining the appearance of a man taking a break from intensive technical research. In reality, he was listening to the systematic destruction of a spy network that had spent years infiltrating his life. Phase 3 preparation, Leon announced. All units stand by for final extraction. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait for the prey to walk into it. At 10:34 p.m., Kaya's screens exploded with data as the stolen files began their journey through the digital underground. The tracking codes she'd embedded activated like digital bloodhounds, following the data through proxy servers, encrypted channels, and network nodes that spanned 3 continents. "Holy shit," she whispered, then immediately covered her mouth. "Sorry, Mom's gonna kill me for language." Leon chuckled despite the tension. "In this context, that's professional technical analysis. What are you seeing?" "It's bigger than we thought," Kaya said, her voice filled with awe and terror. "The network isn't just targeting tech companies, it's targeting infrastructure, power grids, telecommunications, financial systems. This is preparation for cyber warfare." The main screen in Leon's command van displayed a network diagram that looked like a digital nervous system. Red lines connected hundreds of compromised systems across the United States, Europe, and Asia. Each connection represented a potential attack vector, a way to shut down critical systems that modern society depended on. "Marcus, you need to see this," Leon said through the comm. In his office, Marcus maintained his facade of late-night work while listening to the discovery that was reshaping their understanding of the threat. This wasn't corporate espionage. It was nation-state preparation for digital warfare on a scale that could cripple entire countries. "The good news," Kaya continued, "is that our tracers are mapping everything. Every node, every handler, every ultimate destination. By tomorrow morning, we'll have intelligence that the NSA would trade their entire budget for." Through the hidden microphones, they listened to Sarah coordinating with handlers using coded language that revealed the scope of the operation. "Package is 73% complete," she reported. "Delivery confirmed for Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie sites. Delta site requesting acceleration for Sunday timeline." Leon's team had broken their encryption weeks ago. Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie were intelligence stations in Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran. Delta was a private military contractor with ties to several hostile governments. Sunday timeline referred to a coordinated attack planned for 3 days away. We're not just stopping theft, Marcus realized. We're stopping an act of war. The beautiful part, Kaya said with the satisfaction of someone who'd just solved an impossible puzzle, is they don't know we know. They're so focused on extraction that they haven't noticed their entire network is being mapped in real time. At 11:02 p.m., David completed his server room activities and Sarah finished her coordination calls. Both began their exit procedures, confident that they'd successfully completed their mission. The stolen data was already traveling through international networks, apparently undetected and untraced. What they didn't realize was that Kaya had turned their success into the most comprehensive intelligence coup in cybersecurity history. Phase 4 initiation, Leon announced. All teams move to arrest positions. But Kaya held up her hand. Wait, there's something else. Her screens showed a new pattern of communications, encrypted signals that weren't part of the established network. Someone else is watching the watchers. There's a third party monitoring Sarah and David's communications. Leon leaned forward, his expression grim. Friendly or hostile? Unknown, Kaya replied, but sophisticated. Government-level encryption, careful timing, professional tradecraft. Whoever it is, they've been tracking this operation as long as we have. The realization hung heavy in the command van. They weren't the only ones who discovered the spy network. Someone else was playing the same game, which meant the situation was far more complex than a simple counterintelligence operation. Could be NSA, Leon suggested, or CIA or any number of allied intelligence services. Or, Kaya said quietly, it could be the people behind Sarah and David. A fourth layer we haven't identified yet. Marcus's voice crackled through the comm. What's our move? Leon made the decision that would define the next phase of the operation. We proceed as planned, but we add surveillance on the surveillors. Kaya, can you trace the third party without alerting them? Already on it, she replied, fingers dancing across her keyboard. Give me 10 minutes. A 9-year-old just uncovered a network that could start World War III. Smash that like button if you want to see how she saves the country before bedtime. At 11:23 p.m., as Sarah and David prepared to leave CyberShield believing their mission was complete, Kaya made a discovery that changed everything. The third party isn't foreign intelligence, she announced, her voice tight with concentration. It's domestic, FBI Counterintelligence Division, operating under a FISA warrant issued 6 months ago. Leon's expression shifted from concern to professional respect. They've been running a parallel investigation, probably using Sarah and David as unwitting assets to map the entire network. Marcus felt his world tilt again. So you're telling me the FBI has been watching my fiancé spy on me for 6 months and didn't warn me? Standard practice, Leon explained grimly. They sacrifice individual targets to catch bigger fish. Your company was acceptable collateral damage if it led to rolling up a major espionage network. The moral implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The U.S. government had knowingly allowed foreign agents to infiltrate his life, steal his intellectual property, and violate his personal relationships, all in service of a larger intelligence operation that treated him as expendable. There's more, Kaya said, her voice small and angry. The FBI knows about the planned Sunday attack. They're not just watching, they're letting it happen to see how deep the network goes. Leon's jaw clenched. How many people are they willing to sacrifice for intelligence? Kaya pulled up classified communications that she definitely shouldn't have been able to access. Estimated casualties from Sunday's cyber attacks, 400,000 to 1. 2 million, depending on which infrastructure targets are hit and how quickly systems can be restored. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Somewhere in Washington, analysts had calculated that up to 1 million American lives were acceptable losses to gather intelligence on enemy capabilities. Marcus made a decision that would haunt him forever or make him a hero, possibly both. We're not letting that happen, he said. FBI surveillance or not, we're stopping this tonight. Marcus, Leon warned, if we interfere with an active FBI counterintelligence operation, we could be charged with obstruction, possibly treason. If we don't interfere, Marcus replied, 1 million people could die so that some bureaucrat in Washington can write a more detailed threat assessment. Kaya looked up from her screens, her 9-year-old face carrying a gravity that belonged to someone much older. Mr. Reed, there's a third option. I'm listening. We finish mapping the network like we planned. But we do it faster than the FBI expects. Then we simultaneously expose the spies and warn the infrastructure targets about Sunday's attack. We save the people and catch the bad guys. Leon considered the proposal with the analytical mind of someone who'd spent decades weighing impossible choices. Tactically sound, but it requires perfect timing. One mistake and we lose everything. No, Kaya corrected gently. One mistake and other people lose everything. We've already won. We have the evidence. We have the network topology. We have proof of the crimes. The only question is whether we use that information to save lives or protect bureaucratic procedures. Marcus looked at this extraordinary child who'd somehow become his moral compass in the darkest moment of his life. 6 months ago, she'd been a quiet kid who ate lunch alone and spent evenings in his office learning programming. Tonight, she was advocating for a course of action that could prevent mass casualties while exposing institutional failure at the highest levels of government. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Stay exactly where you are," Kaya replied. "Keep acting normal while Leon's team moves into position. In 37 minutes, I'm going to trigger the largest intelligence disclosure in cybersecurity history." Leon nodded slowly. Simultaneous evidence dumps to multiple news outlets, congressional oversight committees and international allies. Full transparency, maximum protective distribution. "And the Sunday attack?" Kaya smiled. And for the first time in days, it was the smile of a child who'd just figured out how to save the world. Every infrastructure target gets an anonymous warning with just enough technical detail to prove the threat is real. By Sunday morning, the attack will hit hardened systems ready for defense. Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Pride. Not in his company, not in his success, but in the extraordinary young person who'd shown him what real courage looked like. "Let's do it," he said. At exactly 11:59 p.m., 3 things happened simultaneously across multiple time zones. First, every major news outlet in North America and Europe received encrypted files containing complete documentation of the spy network, including videos, financial records, and communication intercepts that proved beyond doubt the existence of a coordinated attack on Western infrastructure. Second, the FBI's San Francisco field office received an anonymous package containing copies of their own surveillance files, along with evidence that their acceptable losses calculation had been intercepted and documented by unknown parties. Third, cybersecurity departments at 47 critical infrastructure facilities received detailed warnings about specific attack vectors that would be deployed in 36 hours, along with technical countermeasures that would neutralize the threats. Kaya Williams, age 9, had just prevented a cyber war while simultaneously exposing the institutional failures that had made it possible. "Package delivered," she announced to the command van with the satisfaction of someone who'd just changed history. Leon's team monitored government and media communications as the disclosure rippled through the information ecosystem. Cable news producers worked through the night to verify documents. Congressional staffers fielded emergency calls from Intelligence Committee members. Infrastructure managers across the country began implementing emergency security protocols. Most importantly, Sarah Chen and David Chen found themselves surrounded by FBI agents in the CyberShield parking garage. "Sarah Chen, David Chen, you're under arrest for violations of the Espionage Act, conspiracy to commit cyber terrorism, and theft of classified information," the lead agent announced as tactical teams secured both suspects. Marcus watched from his office window as the woman he'd planned to marry was led away in handcuffs. He felt no satisfaction in her capture, only sadness for the relationship that had never been real and relief that the threat was finally over. "How do you feel?" Kaya asked through the comm system. "Like I've been living in someone else's life for 2 years, Marcus replied honestly. Down in the parking garage, Sarah turned toward the building and looked directly up at Marcus's office window. Even from 42 floors up, he could see her expression, not anger or defiance, but something that might have been regret. The FBI agents were reading both suspects their rights when Sarah's handler attempted to activate emergency protocols. According to plan, this should have triggered the destruction of evidence and the acceleration of Sunday's attack timeline. Instead, every signal was intercepted and traced by Kaya's monitoring systems. Within minutes, law enforcement agencies across 3 continents were simultaneously raiding safe houses, communications centers, and the foreign intelligence stations that had coordinated the operation. "Network collapse is complete," Kaya reported. "They tried to burn everything, but we were ready. Every signal, every emergency communication, every attempt at damage control just gave us more intelligence." Leon allowed himself a rare smile. The most successful counterintelligence operation in recent history, executed by a 9-year-old with a tablet. But Marcus was thinking about something else. What happens to Cyber Shield now? Our security protocols were compromised. Our executives were spies. Our most sensitive data was stolen. "Actually," Kaya said, pulling up financial projections that she'd somehow calculated while coordinating international law enforcement operations, "Cyber Shield is about to become the most trusted cybersecurity company in the world." She was right. By morning, the story would dominate global news. How a tech company had not only detected and stopped a major espionage operation, but had prevented mass casualties through citizen-led intelligence work. Cyber Shield's stock price would triple within a week, as governments and corporations demanded the services of the company that had proven capable of protecting national security interests. Marcus walked to his office door and opened it for the first time in hours. Leon's team was securing evidence, FBI agents were coordinating with international partners, and somewhere in the building, his mother and Josephine were probably wondering why there were so many people in suits working through the night. But the person he most wanted to see was a 9-year-old girl who'd just saved her country and possibly the world. "Kaya," he said into his comm device, "want to come upstairs? I think it's time we talked about your future." The elevator doors opened at 12:47 a.m. to reveal Kaya Williams, still wearing her oversized Cyber Shield hoodie, flanked by 2 FBI agents who looked like they were escorting a head of state rather than a 4th grader. Her tablet was tucked under one arm, and her expression carried the exhausted satisfaction of someone who'd just completed the hardest test of her life. "Ms. Williams," the senior FBI agent said formally, "on behalf of the United States government, thank you for your service tonight." Kaya blinked, suddenly looking every bit her 9 years. "Am I in trouble?" Marcus stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The opposite of trouble. You're a hero." The FBI briefing that followed took place in Cyber Shield's main conference room, with Kaya seated at the head of the table like a tiny CEO, while adults 3 times her age took notes on her technical explanations. She walked them through her detection methods, her trace protocols, her real-time analysis of enemy communications, all delivered in the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing homework rather than national security operations. "The initial anomaly was subtle," she explained, pulling up network diagrams on the main screen. "Just a timing variance in the digital frame's display rotation that didn't match its specifications. Most people would assume it was a software glitch, but software glitches don't follow patterns that correspond to human sleep cycles." Special Agent Martinez, who'd been investigating cyber crimes for 15 years, shook her head in amazement. "How did you know to look for that pattern?" "I read about it in a book about Soviet surveillance techniques," Kaya replied. "They used to hide microphones in clock radios, but the recording mechanisms would create tiny fluctuations in the timing circuits. Same principle, modern technology." Leon leaned back in his chair, wearing the expression of someone who'd discovered a protege beyond his wildest expectations. "Kaya, what do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to stop bad people from hurting good people," she said simply. "Like tonight, but maybe with less staying up past bedtime." The room erupted in laughter, the first genuine humor anyone had experienced in what felt like weeks. Agent Martinez's expression grew serious. "Ms. Williams, what you've done tonight has prevented what our analysts estimate would have been the most devastating cyber attack in U.S. history. The infrastructure warnings you distributed have already triggered security upgrades at critical facilities across the country." "What about the people who were planning to attack on Sunday?" Kaya asked. "Arrested or in hiding," another agent replied. "The network you mapped led us to operational cells in 12 countries. It'll take months to process all the intelligence, but the immediate threat has been neutralized." Marcus had been quiet during the briefing, watching Kaya handle adult attention and praise, with the same methodical approach she applied to everything else. Now he had a question that had been bothering him since the operation concluded. "Kaya, when did you first suspect something was wrong, not just with the digital frame, but with everything?" She considered the question carefully. The first day Sarah visited your office. She asked too many questions about things that weren't her business. But the thing that really made me suspicious was how she reacted when I walked into the room. How did she react? Like she'd been expecting me, Kaya said. Most adults either ignore kids or talk down to us. Sarah acted like she already knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. That meant she'd done research, which meant she was more than just your girlfriend. The implications sent a chill through the room. Sarah's intelligence operation had included profiling a 9-year-old girl, identifying her as a potential threat to their activities. They were afraid of you, Marcus realized. They should have been, Kaya replied with a small smile that contained more confidence than most adults ever managed. As the FBI team prepared to leave, Agent Martinez approached Kaya with an expression of professional respect. Ms. Williams, when you turn 18, if you're interested in a career with the Bureau, please give me a call. Kaya looked at the business card seriously, then tucked it into her hoodie pocket. Thank you, but I think I want to start my own company, something that helps kids like me find the bad guys that adults miss. Marcus smiled, already imagining the possibilities. 6 weeks later, Marcus Reed sat in a federal courthouse in downtown San Francisco, watching Sarah Chen be sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for espionage, cyber-terrorism, and conspiracy against the United States. She wore an orange jumpsuit instead of designer clothing, and her hands were shackled, but her expression remained composed, the same calculated calm she'd maintained throughout their relationship. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Sarah stood and spoke in a clear voice that carried no trace of remorse. I was serving my country, she said. The fact that my country wasn't the same as the one where I was arrested doesn't make my actions less patriotic. The courtroom was packed with journalists, federal agents, and tech industry executives who'd followed the case that had reshaped international cybersecurity policy. In the gallery, Kaya sat between her mother and Josephine, wearing a navy blue dress that made her look older and more serious than her 10 years. Her birthday had passed during the legal proceedings. David Chen had plea bargained for a reduced sentence in exchange for providing detailed testimony about the network's operations. 15 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole in 10. His cooperation had led to arrests across 3 continents and the dismantling of infrastructure that had taken years to establish. The international implications were still unfolding. The Chinese government had expelled 17 U.S. diplomats in retaliation for the espionage revelations. Russia had denied any involvement while quietly shutting down 3 technology research facilities that matched the network topology Kaya had mapped. Iran had arrested 12 of its own intelligence officers in an apparent purge of anyone connected to the failed operation. But the most significant changes were happening in Silicon Valley itself. CyberShield's stock price had stabilized at 3 times its pre-crisis value. More importantly, Marcus had received contracts from 47 countries seeking the security protocols that had detected and neutralized the spy network. The Kaya Protocol, named after its primary architect, was becoming the international standard for detecting sophisticated surveillance operations. How does it feel? Diane Williams asked Marcus as they left the courthouse. Watching her get sentenced? Marcus considered the question as they walked toward his car. Sad, he said finally. Not because of the sentence, she earned that, but because I still don't know which parts of our relationship were real and which were performance. Does it matter? Kaya asked, taking his hand as they crossed the street. What do you mean? Whether her feelings were real or fake doesn't change how you felt, Kaya explained, with the directness that had made her such an effective analyst. You loved someone who you thought she was. That love was real even if she wasn't. Marcus squeezed her hand, amazed again by her emotional intelligence. When did you get so wise? I think it happened when I realized that grown-ups make the same mistakes as kids, Kaya replied. They just have bigger consequences. The ride back to CyberShield passed in comfortable silence. Marcus had offered to drive Diane and Kaya home, but Kaya had requested to stop by the office first. She had something she wanted to show him. In the elevator to the executive floor, Kaya pulled out a tablet, not her old cracked device, but a sleek new model that Marcus had given her for her birthday, loaded with software that most security professionals couldn't access. I've been working on something, she said as the elevator climbed. A way to make sure this never happens to anyone else. What kind of way? A system that teaches people, especially kids, how to spot the kind of anomalies I found in the digital frame. Like a computer program that trains your brain to notice things that don't belong. Marcus felt his heart swell with pride and possibility. You want to democratize counterintelligence. I want to make every kid in America a potential guardian, Kaya corrected. Bad people are always going to try to infiltrate and steal and hurt others. But if everyone knows how to spot the signs, then the bad people can't hide, Marcus finished. As the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, Marcus realized that Sarah's betrayal had led to something far more valuable than anything she could have stolen, a partnership with someone who saw protecting others not as a job, but as a calling. 3 months after the sentencing, Kaya Williams stood in front of a joint session of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, her small frame dwarfed by the formal hearing room, but her voice carrying clearly through the microphones as she explained how a 10-year-old with a tablet had accomplished what billions of dollars in government surveillance had missed. The problem isn't technology, she testified, reading from prepared remarks while occasionally glancing up at the assembled senators and representatives. The problem is that grown-ups think complicated threats require complicated solutions. Sometimes the most dangerous attacks succeed because they're hiding in plain sight. The hearing had been scheduled after CyberShield's security protocols prevented 2 additional espionage attempts, one targeting a defense contractor in Texas, another aimed at a pharmaceutical company developing vaccines. In both cases, the Kaya protocol had detected anomalies that traditional security systems had missed. Senator Elizabeth Warren leaned forward in her chair. Ms. Williams, what would you recommend to improve our national cybersecurity infrastructure? Kaya had prepared for this question with the same methodical approach she applied to code analysis. First, teach pattern recognition in elementary school, the same way we teach reading and math. Second, create civilian surveillance networks where ordinary people can report anomalies they notice in their daily lives. Third, stop treating cybersecurity like it's only for experts. Can you elaborate on that last point? Every person who uses technology is part of the cybersecurity infrastructure, Kaya explained. But we teach them to ignore things that seem weird instead of investigating them. If more people knew what normal technology behavior looks like, fewer bad actors could hide abnormal activities. Behind her in the gallery, Marcus watched with amazement as his former ward, now officially his adopted daughter, calmly revolutionized national security policy. The legal adoption had been finalized 2 weeks prior, making official what had been true since the night she'd whispered about hidden microphones. They were family. The institutional changes were already happening. The Department of Homeland Security had funded pilot programs in 12 school districts to teach digital awareness alongside traditional computer literacy. The NSA had quietly implemented protocols based on Kaya's detection methods. Most significantly, Congress was considering legislation that would require all government contractors to implement security measures designed by the 10-year-old who'd prevented a cyber war. But the changes weren't limited to government. Silicon Valley had embraced what tech journalists were calling the Kaya Revolution, a shift toward transparency and citizen engagement in cybersecurity that challenged decades of proprietary secrecy. CyberShield itself had become something unprecedented, a publicly traded company that published its security methodologies, encouraged independent testing, and maintained a civilian advisory board that included teachers, librarians, and other professionals who worked with young people. The most secure systems, Marcus had explained to skeptical investors, are the ones that invite scrutiny instead of hiding from it. After the congressional hearing, Kaya and Marcus walked through Washington's early spring sunshine toward the car that would take them to the airport. The cherry blossoms were blooming along the Potomac, and tourists filled the sidewalks with the energy of people discovering their capital city. Tired? Marcus asked as they settled into the back seat. A little, Kaya admitted. But good tired, like when you solve a really hard programming problem. What's next for the Kaya Williams agenda for world improvement? She smiled, pulling out her tablet to show him diagrams that looked like architectural blueprints, crossed with computer code. I want to design schools. Schools? Buildings where kids can learn technology the way they learn science, by observing, experimenting, and discovering patterns. Most schools teach computer skills like they're teaching typing. I want to teach digital citizenship, like we're training future guardians. Marcus looked at the designs, seeing not just educational innovation, but a complete reimagining of how society could prepare young people for a world where technology and security were inseparable. How many schools? All of them, Kaya replied with the matter-of-fact confidence that had stopped a cyber war. Starting with one perfect prototype, then scaling to everywhere kids need to learn. As their plane lifted off from Reagan National Airport, Marcus realized that Sarah's betrayal had led to something far beyond personal healing or corporate success. It had sparked a generational change in how America would defend itself in the digital age. And it had all started with a 9-year-old girl who noticed that something was blinking when it shouldn't. 1 year later, Marcus Reed stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Kaya Williams Institute for Digital Citizenship, a gleaming facility in Palo Alto designed according to specifications that no educational architect had ever imagined. The building itself was a testament to Kaya's vision. Transparent walls that encouraged observation, flexible learning spaces that could be reconfigured for different types of investigation, and technology labs where elementary school students worked alongside cybersecurity professionals on real-world problems. "Ready?" he asked Kaya, who was holding oversized scissors and wearing a blue dress that somehow made her look both professional and exactly 11 years old. "Ready," she replied, then paused. "Actually, wait. I want to say something first." The assembled crowd, which included tech executives, education officials, former FBI agents, and 3 members of Congress, quieted as Kaya stepped to the microphone. "A year and a half ago, I was just a kid who spent too much time on computers because I didn't have many friends," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the crowd. "I thought being different was a problem I needed to solve. But Mr. Reed, my dad, taught me that being different is a superpower, especially when you use it to protect people." Marcus felt his eyes well up at her casual use of dad. The adoption had been legal for months, but hearing her claim the relationship publicly still moved him. "This institute isn't about teaching kids to be like me," Kaya continued. "It's about teaching them to be the best versions of themselves. Some kids will be great at pattern recognition, others at creative problem-solving, others at understanding human behavior. We need all of those skills if we're going to keep our world safe." She gestured toward the building behind her, where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed classrooms filled with technology that most universities couldn't afford. "Every person who learns here will graduate knowing how to spot threats, how to investigate anomalies, and how to protect their communities. Not because they're training to be spies or soldiers, but because they're training to be citizens." The applause was thunderous, but Kaya held up her hand for one more moment. "There's one more thing. The people who tried to hurt our country, who betrayed trust and stole secrets, they counted on nobody paying attention to the small details. They counted on adults being too busy and kids being too young to notice what was happening. This institute exists to make sure that never happens again." She cut the ribbon with a decisive snip, and the crowd erupted in celebration as the first students, carefully selected from school districts across the country, rushed into their new learning environment. Later, as the crowds dispersed and the sun set over Silicon Valley, Marcus and Kaya sat on a bench outside the institute, watching the last of the visitors drive away. "How does it feel?" Marcus asked. "Seeing your vision become real." Kaya leaned against his shoulder, suddenly looking less like a revolutionary educator and more like a kid who'd had a very long day. Like the beginning instead of the end. "What do you mean?" "We stopped one spy network, created one institute, changed some policies," she said thoughtfully. "But there are still bad people out there. Still kids who don't know they have superpowers. Still adults who think complex problems need complex solutions." Marcus smiled. "So what's the plan for world domination, Ms. Williams?" "Start small," she replied, echoing the advice he'd given her that night in his office when she'd first whispered about hidden microphones. "One institute becomes 10, becomes 100. One kid who learns to spot anomalies teaches 10 friends. One success story inspires 1,000 people to pay attention to details they used to ignore." As the stars began to appear over the Bay Area, Marcus realized that Sarah's greatest failure hadn't been getting caught. It had been underestimating the power of genuine connection. She'd studied him, manipulated him, calculated his responses, but she'd never understood that real relationships create something stronger than any intelligence operation: the willingness to fight for each other. Kaya yawned, a sound so normal and childlike that it reminded Marcus of everything they'd protected. Not just national security or corporate secrets, but the simple right of brilliant kids to grow up in a world where their curiosity was nurtured instead of exploited. "Dad," she said sleepily, "do you think she ever really cared about you?" It was the question Marcus had stopped asking himself months ago, but hearing it from Kaya made him consider it one final time. "I think she cared about the person she thought I could become if she succeeded in changing me," he said finally. "But she never cared about the person I actually was." "That's sad," Kaya observed. "For her, I mean. She spent so much time pretending to be someone else that she probably forgot who she really was." Marcus looked down at his daughter, brilliant, compassionate, uncompromising in her dedication to protecting others, and felt a gratitude so profound it took his breath away. Sarah had intended to destroy his life, but her betrayal had led him to the most important relationship he'd ever had. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Kaya nodded, then looked back at the institute one more time. Through the windows, they could see the cleaning crew working, including Diane Williams, who'd been promoted to facilities manager, but still insisted on personally maintaining the building where her daughter was changing the world. "Tomorrow, 24 kids start learning how to be digital guardians," Kaya said. "Next month, we'll have our first graduating class. By next year, there will be institutes in 12 cities. And in 10 years—" "In 10 years," Kaya said with the confidence of someone who'd already prevented one war and saw no reason she couldn't prevent others, "no bad guy will be able to hide in plain sight ever again." As they walked toward the car, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Leon, who was consulting on institute security. "Media wants to interview Kaya about the congressional testimony. How do you want to handle it?" Marcus showed Kaya the message. "What do you think?" "I think," she said, "that the best way to protect people is to teach them how to protect themselves. So yes, interviews are good, but only if they focus on what other kids can do, not just what I did." Marcus typed back, "Schedule them, but the message stays consistent. Every kid has the potential to be a guardian." As they drove through the quiet streets of Palo Alto, past the headquarters of companies that had reshaped the world through technology, Marcus thought about legacy. Not the corporate kind measured in stock prices and market capitalization, but the human kind measured in lives protected and potential realized. A year and a half ago, a 9-year-old girl had whispered about a hidden microphone and changed everything. Tonight, that same girl, now 11, now his daughter, now the architect of a revolution in how society defended itself, was already planning tomorrow's lessons for 24 kids who would grow up knowing that their observation, their curiosity, their willingness to speak up when something seemed wrong could save the world. The digital frame that had started it all was now on display in the Institute's lobby, clearly labeled as a surveillance device and accompanied by an explanation of how Kaya had detected its anomalous behavior. It served as both historical artifact and teaching tool, a reminder that the most sophisticated threats often succeeded through the simplest deceptions. But next to the frame sat something more important, a guest book where every visitor was invited to write about a time they'd noticed something that didn't seem right. The entries ranged from children describing bullies who acted differently when adults weren't watching, to adults noting unusual patterns in their workplaces, to elderly visitors sharing stories of how small observations had led to big discoveries. The message was clear. Everyone could be a guardian. Everyone had the power to notice what others missed. Everyone's voice mattered when something was wrong. As they pulled into the driveway of their San Francisco home, the same house where Sarah had once planted surveillance equipment, Kaya was already falling asleep in the passenger seat. Marcus carried her inside, noting how she instinctively clutched her tablet even while unconscious, and tucked her into bed in the room they'd decorated together after the adoption was finalized. On her nightstand sat a photo of her with her biological parents, a copy of her congressional testimony, and a letter from a 12-year-old in Ohio who'd used Kaya's techniques to detect cyberbullying at her school. The juxtaposition captured everything about who Kaya had become, someone who honored her past, engaged with her present, and built the future she wanted to live in. Marcus stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his daughter sleep and thinking about whispered secrets that had changed the world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new opportunities to prove that observation and courage could overcome any conspiracy. But tonight, the house was secure, the institute was built, and a remarkable young woman was dreaming of a world where no child would ever have to carry dangerous secrets alone. In the end, that might be the greatest victory of all. Thank you for watching, subscribing, and commenting.